Alright, so Intolerance was actually from 1916. I apologize. Apparently I said it was from 1915 in my last video. Sorry. Same difference, really. 1915, 16, it's very close. I actually liked this movie. Thank you, D.W. Griffith. He actually did something right. I didn't have to pause it continuously all the way through, like I did with Birth of a Nation, which was just so boring. So very boring. And this one, called Intolerance, actually had 4 different stories, which was telling you how intolerance existed throughout a bunch of different ages. There's a today story, which is the present day of 1916, with people working in a mill. And then there's the Babylonian times, the times of Jesus, and there's also a one from 1572 France, I believe. So that's good. Yes. So basically, they start off with like the Today story, and they introduce you to all the characters, and they all have really strange names, like the Dear One, and the Friendless One, and Boy. Yes, his name is Boy. That's helpful, I guess. When the words come up, they actually give you definitions for words you may not know, like Pharisee or Huguenots, because, you know, that's what the Catholics in France called the Protestants. So there's that, and yeah, so, you know, that's nice. And the backgrounds of each of the texts correspond to each story, so there's this fancy little thing for when it switches to France, and then there's like the 10 Commandments in Hebrew when it's for, you know, the time of Jesus, and all that other fun stuff. So that's cool. I think my favorite character was the mountain girl in the Babylonian times, because she was just so feisty, and she actually, you know, she decides to get up and fight because she's infatuated with the emperor or whatever, and so she goes and fights for him and all that fun stuff. And I think the costumes, it's a tie between France and Babylon. France, just because that era I really like, and the fact that they had such elaborate costuming back then makes me wish it wasn't in black and white, so I could see all the vibrant colors that probably were in there. And the set for Babylon was definitely ridiculously awesome, and the cinematography was really impressive. I was surprised. I thought I was going to have to go through the whole thing going, I hate my life. I just thought I would have to call people to make sure that, you know, I was still sane. But no, I actually didn't have to pause this as much. I mean, the only time I paused it was to get pictures. And the only thing I noticed in the movie that really bugged me is when they misspelled words, but I guess that's okay, because you can't really fix that now anyway. But, I mean, I thought maybe it was just because that's how maybe they spelled things back then, but no, later when they spelled employees, like, possessive with an apostrophe at the end, they spelled it with 1 E, and I was like, I don't think that's how you spell that, because the next scene you see the words employee dance or whatever, and there's 2 E's in there, so I was like, you guys messed up. But aside some misspellings, it's actually an interesting movie, and it keeps cutting to a woman who's rocking a cradle, and I believe it's supposed to be the cradle of civilization. I believe that's what I read. And I thought that was a really interesting metaphor, and she pops up in between the stories a lot. But then, all of a sudden, the movie has worse ADD than I do, and it keeps going all over the place, back and forth, and you're like, ah, where am I? Because, you know, Jesus, Babylon, France, oh my god, today, Babylon, you know, and you're just like, you know, I can't keep up with you gotta show us more transition than that. And I mean, of course, it's all these intolerant things, so everybody's, you know, hypocritical of each other, and everybody's dying and killing, and, you know, I mean, there's all these deaths, but then you see babies and children and babies, and you're like, aww. And one of the things that happens is the dear one, the girl from the present time, has her baby seized. Like, okay, and her husband is like wrongly accused of he gets framed by a person because he says he's leaving the gang or whatever. So he gets arrested, and they say, you know, he's gonna hang and all this other fun stuff. I'm not gonna give a lot away for you, but I will say that all the transitions did help, because once a story began to get kind of slow, they switched to a new one. So you're like, okay. So it's good for those of us who have ADD who are like, I'm bored now. Oh hey, look, a new thing. So that was nice, because I didn't have to pay attention too long to one main story, because there are 4 of them in this film. Then there's the Massacre of Bartholomew in France, and that's just so intense. They show a lot of graphic stuff that I didn't think that they would show. Like, there are people getting beheaded, and they have like up closes of that shit, and people getting stabbed and blood pouring out of them. That's fucking awesome. I mean, it's not for the people who died, but the effects were amazing for 1916. I was impressed. I was definitely impressed by that. So basically what happens is you follow every story in parallels with what is going on in each world, so to speak. So near the endings, there's all the crucifixion, the Babylonians are going to war against the Persians, all that fun stuff. So basically you go through the entire movie following the intolerance of each world, and you see how it's happened throughout history. And I think part of the reason I like this is because I'm a history kid, and that's just who I am. So it may not be because I actually I actually like the movie. Maybe it's just because I'm a history buff. But I am definitely gonna say that this is the first movie that I will definitely say, see before you die. Because this movie was actually really, really good. It was 3 hours long, but it didn't feel like that because there were so many things going on. You couldn't, like, you know, it was just easy to follow because it had so much to tell, and the characters are actually really well developed, and even though there are so many of them, and I think, yeah, the Mountain Girl is definitely my favorite. She just decides to, and then just the times that she gets like close-ups and she's like, smile, and you're like, oh boy, because they basically are like, she's incorrigible, take her to the marriage market. And when the emperor comes by, he's like, no, you don't have to get married. He gives her this special seal or whatever that says you can choose to be married or not. And that's why she decides to pledge her allegiance to him and goes to war by dressing in, you know, warrior garb. And I mean, I'm not really sure how Babylonian stuff worked because I am not actually in that area in study, but I would like to learn more because if women actually did that, that's awesome. But yeah, so this is definitely a movie you should see. I believe this will be the first movie I say definitely see before you die. It is the #1. D.W. Griffith, I apologize for my previous outbursts towards you. I commend you for this one. Yep, you're good on that one. So this is Rin. This is my 5th movie, I think. Yeah, 5th movie. I did the math, and I am less than 1% done the list. So I'll be here for a while, and I'm sorry it's taking me so long to get the next video. Not that anyone watches these anyway. So I will see you all later. I'm gonna go watch the next movie.